Hello again to Teaching English to Teens. Glad you could join us. In this module and throughout the modules, we will present various materials to help you to think deeply about the principles of teaching and language acquisition. So let's begin with the first, 4 C's, key terms and issues. I'd like you to have a look at the picture of mother trees. Forest ecologist Susan Seymour studies what she calls mother trees. She identifies mother trees as tall, old-growth trees with vast root systems connected to hundreds of other trees via a network of fungi that allows them to share resources and information. Mother trees are the source of forest resilience and renewal in the face of modern stressors. Does this sound familiar to you? In the teaching context, we teachers could be compared to mother trees. And not because we are old, it's not the point I would like you to focus, but because just like the trees, we teachers are connected to hundreds of students and build our own network to develop their skills and support their learning. And just like mother trees, teachers are highly influential. Every single day is an opportunity to create a lasting impact on our students, helping them to develop more complex skills, which are built on foundational skills. And while all 21st century skills are necessary to teach, luckily for us, they have since been sentenced into just 4 C's, which are often considered to be the most important. So, what are 4 C's of 21st century skills? They are critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. These 4 skills are essential for modern students to succeed in school and at the workplace. They often make the biggest impact in terms of setting our students apart when applying for and starting their careers. Due to the fact that our world is changing and quickly, the way we communicate or access to information as well as learn, all rapidly evolving technology. The skills that were once necessary for success after graduation have also begun to shift to reflect the changing landscape. And while life skills education does not solve every single problem, it can be a wonderful tool in addressing many of them. There are very few, if any, situations that exist where life skills would not be beneficial. Students learn to be better citizens, better friends, and better family members. Life skills do not just affect the way students interact with the world, but also the way they see the world. So it's important to develop these skills as early as possible to help our students create better future for themselves and for the world at large. And there are a few reasons why are the 4 C's important skills to develop. First of all, critical thinking empowers students to discover the truth, separating fact from opinion. Creativity teaches students to think outside the box. Collaboration teaches students that groups can create something bigger and probably better than on your own. Communication teaches students how to efficiently convey ideas. So let's discover what each skill entails and why they are so important to teach. So let's start by reading the definition of critical thinking by Tara Delacqui. Critical thinking means making reasoned judgments that are logical and well thought out. It is a way of thinking in which you don't simply accept all arguments and conclusions you are exposed to, but rather have an attitude involving questioning, such as arguments and conclusions. It requires wanting to see what evidence is involved to support a particular argument or conclusion. If we take this definition and break down the idea of preparing students for the world we live in, we can say that critical thinking is important in several ways. First of all, it helps students to have a look at the object from different angles, observing every detail, discovering new information, understanding logical connections between the ideas. Second of all, that makes them better communicators as students became more open-minded and empathetic. They collaborate more effectively, discussing new ideas and solving problems. So, based on what was mentioned, we might assume that critical thinking is one of the main purposes of education. So, how can students apply critical thinking? Of course, there are different ways to do it. Still, all of them have a lot in common. The first stage deals with identifying. What would you like to know? The second one deals with research. Do I use reliable resources? What resources can be identified or listed as reliable? The next one deals with applying the information found. In what way the information found could be applied to the initial question. Another stage deals with analyzing. Am I satisfied with the information I found? Do I need to continue my research? One more deals with drawing conclusions. What decisions can I make based on what was learned? And the last one, the most important stage. At this stage, you make your decisions applicable to the initial question. Of course, it might not always be possible to follow all the steps depending on activity. But does that mean that we shouldn't develop critical thinking? The answer is pretty simple. No. In case we can't follow the stages one by one, we might ask a simple question why when students make a statement. Or we may ask, how do you know that? Or where did you find this information? Answering these questions, students reevaluate what they believe and question whether they actually should believe it. Sometimes we have certain beliefs without truly understanding why we believe it. So by asking these kind of questions, we teach our students to think and develop critical thinking skills. If you are worried that your students do not have enough language to express their viewpoint, you may use TPR activities. This is the way they associate language and movement. In this way, they start producing language by responding with their bodies. You may also ask your students to categorize words. Make comparisons or memorize when you deal with facts in a story or characters. You may also ask your students to think of cause and effect, problem and solution, and so on. These activities are very practical as you can use them at any stage of your lesson. You may also offer your students something bigger, like a project. Projects work well for several reasons. First, they promote creativity, collaboration, and communication. And secondly, students develop critical thinking skills by using reliable resources of information, applying the information they found, analyzing the facts, questioning each other, solving problems, and creating the project. So let's have a look at classroom activities that share the following aims: to develop critical thinking skills and to teach and practice a particular language. The activities you are about to have a look at are aimed to encourage students to consider ways students can approach text more critically, and to question assumptions as well as encourage students to apply the arguments and opinions into their own views. And the first activity I would like you to have a look at is expressing opinion and reasoning. Critical thinking aim is to develop the skill of supporting a viewpoint with reasons, and language aim is to practice expressing opinion and giving reasons with the conjunction because. This activity works well with A2 and A2 plus level students. This activity introduces students to the need for supporting an opinion with reasons, providing language that they need to achieve this. So have a look at this table. You may write this table on the board. Language presented is a sample language. You may use the one you want to deal with. The opinions you see are printing or handwriting, Googling or finding information in the library, using smartphone or laptop, reading paper book or e-book. But basically, it can be any language you want to work with. And in this sample table, I have a structure. I would prefer something to something. For example, you may ask your students, what would you prefer? And they need to use the structure. I would prefer printing to handwriting, or I would prefer Googling to finding information in the library. But the most important thing is that they need to explain why they choose this or that option. You may also move on with other activities, like you may ask your students which option works for them. Then move on with why question. Ask them to list its advantages. Ask them to present their ideas to their partner or to group. Ask students to reason the opinion they choose. And you may move on with class discussion. Another lovely activity to use is called critical questioning. And critical thinking aim here is to develop students' critical questioning skills. And the language aim is to practice asking closed and open questions. It's good for A2 and A2 plus level students. Students need to develop the skill of asking questions to become effective critical thinkers. This activity shows them how closed questions could lead to open questions, which are much more effective. At the same time, students review the structures they need to ask questions. So what do students do? They may work in pairs. They receive a list of questions. Do you think fast food is bad for you? Do you think that teens spend too much time online? Do you think teens are aware of online safety? Or do you consider the world to be a safe place? Then explain your students that they take turns asking these questions. Right after yes or no answer, the next question should be why. And the answer to this question requires providing evidence to support the previous answer, and so promotes critical thinking skills. So let's have a look at this sample. Do you think fast food is bad for you? Yes, I do. Why do you think so? Because I've read about the way it is produced, and I watched a video about fast food restaurants. They may move on with another question which deals with relevant resources. So, do you think you can trust the video you watched? Why? If you know that your students can easily answer these questions, you may offer them more challenging ones. What evidence is there that? Or why do you think that? Who says that? How do you know that? When did people start believing that? Or where did you read that? One more activity which deals with critical thinking is context. Critical thinking aim here is to develop the skill of seeing things from another point of view. And the language aim is to describe a photograph in different contexts. It is good for A2 plus level students. As a part of developing a critical mindset, students need to develop the skill of seeing an argument from all sides. This simple activity will raise students' awareness of how the setting of an image or a text can alter our interpretation. So choose an image. It can be a picture somehow related to the topic you teach. And ask your students, what does it show? Where do you think you might see it? For example, online, in the gallery. Did the person who made or took the image have a particular message? And it's up to you to choose the mode of interaction. Students might work in groups discussing this image. You may also provide them with various ideas, like if it was an image of a film for poster, what is the name of the film and what is it about? If it was the front cover of a book, what is the name of the book and what is it about? If it was an advertisement for a product or service, what would it be and what advertising slogan would be on this advert? You may also ask each group to think of one more new way to use this image. Where would we see it? How would it be used? And at the end, each group presents their ideas and the ways in which it could be used, given reasons. Explain that the same picture could be interpreted differently in different contexts. That is why, when we hear an opinion, it is important to understand the context. One more activity is story. So if you deal with a story, here's a universal set of questions and tips to promote critical thinking with literally any story your students read. So let's take Romeo and Juliet as an example. You might ask your students to analyze the characters, like, do you like Juliet? Why? You may use what-if questions. What if Romeo didn't drink the poison? You may introduce or remove a character and then ask for the impact on the storyline. You may ask for another ending of the story. You may ask for another title for the story. You may change the setting and ask for results. And of course, you may ask students to watch the movie after reading and compare and contrast the characters and the storyline. And here we go with creative thinking. Have you ever heard this saying, creativity lights up the brain? Even if you haven't, I'm sure that you know what it means. That's because creativity stimulates thinking capability. So what is creative thinking? Let's start with a few perspectives on what creativity is. If we base our definition on Bloom's taxonomy, then to create is the highest of the 6 cognitive processes. According to Anderson and Krathwohl, students make a new product by mentally reorganizing some elements or parts into a pattern or structure not clearly present before. In the English language classroom, this means that the student creates something new by drawing from all the language they have and perhaps writing a story, a poem, or making a comic, or even creating a blog. Another perspective is that creative thinking is known as thinking outside the box, and creative people have the ability to find new ways to solve problems. Creative thinkers do not view problems as challenges, but rather as exciting puzzles they are able to solve. So why creative thinking is so important? According to Carol Reed, through the integration of creative thinking in English lessons, teenagers develop cognitive skills such as observing, questioning, comparing, contrasting, imagining, and hypothesizing. They also develop metacognitive skills such as ability to evaluate and reflect critically on their own performance and learning outcomes. In addition, the development of creativity increases teenagers' engagement and motivation in studying a language. It makes language learning enjoyable and memorable. It gives teenagers a feeling of success. It promotes teenagers' ability to think in a flexible way. It develops qualities such as patience and persistence, and it contributes to the development of more creative thinking in the future. Creativity is an essential element when it comes to the development of teenagers. Classroom is one of the ideal places where teachers inspire students to use their imagination when it comes to learning. The right mix of creativity along with curriculum helps to encourage students to learn new things easily. So creative classroom can really transform the way students learn and influence how they apply the knowledge in their real life. In fact, it makes them good communicators and improves their emotional and social skills. So how to promote creative thinking? According to Carol Reed, there are 7 pillars of creativity. I transform them into 6 branches of our mother tree. There are many ways to promote critical thinking skills. Here, I will introduce you to the most important, so to say, branches of our mother tree to help develop creative thinking. Build positive self-esteem. Model creativity yourself. Offer teenagers choice. Use questions effectively. Make connections and explore ideas. And I'd like to start with building positive self-esteem. And self-esteem is characterized by 5 components: a sense of security, a sense of identity, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, and a sense of competence. If students feel comfortable in this learning community, they are more likely to collaborate and so develop creative thinking skills. So you can use a wide range of activities to build up positive self-esteem. The example can be circle time activity. Circle time is highly effective activity which personalizes learning, creates a sense of belonging, improves listening skills, promotes collaboration and communication. So students sit or stand in a circle, have a soft ball or a toy to pass around the circle. Students take turns to pass the ball around the circle and complete the sentence. It could be related to any topic you teach. Student can speak when it's his turn. When he has nothing to say, he says pass, or he can say it in his mother tongue. The focus of circle time is create the atmosphere where everyone feels important. When we develop creativity or any other skill in others, we need to model it ourselves. If you want your students to follow the rules of your classroom, you should follow them too. So think about the ways you can be creative in the routine aspects of teaching. Learning routines could be a good example to follow as they provide opportunities for personalization and natural acquisition of language. For example, with teenagers, an enjoyable opening lesson routine could be expanding sentences, which can introduce the topic or vocabulary. Another opening routine could be news of the day, which gives students an opportunity to share their personal news with the class. And don't forget to offer teenagers choice. Offering students a choice, we teach them to take responsibility for their decisions. It leads to motivation and creative work. It also makes learning more personalized and so more enjoyable. Offering a choice can be a powerful tool in classroom management too. So, whenever possible, allow students to choose the format for their work. For example, for projects, students can choose the format in which to present their work. You can also write a list of activities to do on the lesson and ask your students to choose 3 of them. In this way, they will work in a more motivated way than usually. And by the way, when they are offered a choice, they usually choose the most difficult activities. Why is it important to use questions effectively? The way you use questions is important as it leads your students to think creatively. It is crucial to ask questions which interest students and so promote creative thinking. You also need to provide them with the time to answer the questions. And here is the example how you can use Bloom's taxonomy to plan questions and scaffold thinking skills based on the story. So you may start with questions who, what, when, and where in order to recall the information. Then you deal with understanding. So here you may use questions like why, how, what's the main idea. Then we move to the next stage, which is to do with applying. So here we may ask, what would you do in the same situation? The next stage is analyzing. So on this stage, you may ask your students to explain the parts of the story and their relations. On the evaluation stage, you may ask your students which part do you like and explain the reasons behind that. And final stage is creation. So here, your students may invent a new ending. Making connections, generate ideas, and develop creative thinking. Teens can be encouraged to make connections between home and school, present and past learning, ideas learned from different sources. There are various activities that you can use to develop students' ability to make connections. And a good example is associations. This activity encourages students to make connections between things that do not have any connection. So what can you do? Write the words on small pieces of cards and put them in the bag. Students take turns and take 3 cards at random and make a sentence or a story that connects them. To develop creative thinking skills, you need to create the environment which encourages new ideas. The atmosphere should be free from judgment. Problem-solving tasks and activities and brainstorming techniques lead to creative thinking. Some examples of these are mind maps, which can contribute to building up ideas collaboratively, Imagine that this is the activity which is aimed to explore hypothetical possibilities and elicit creative ideas. For example, imagine that fast food disappeared. What happens? Although it is not always easy to develop creativity in teenage classroom due to the course book, syllabus, exams, developing teenagers' creativity has many benefits for language learning, attitudes, and values. And 6 branches of our mother tree are designed to help you to establish a classroom environment in which creativity flourishes. Communication and collaboration are fundamental life skills that students need to be successful in the future. At first glance, the skills of communication and collaboration may seem independent of one another. Communication does not always contribute to collaboration, but collaboration can't happen without communication. Increasingly, learning and innovation skills are being recognized as the skills that separate students who are prepared for increasingly complex life and work environments in the 21st century and those who are not. All of us communicate and collaborate every day, both professionally and personally, yet defining these key components of effective learning and teaching can be quite challenging. Communication and collaboration are intrinsic parts of what we do every day in school. Communication covers a range of forms which can be broadly categorized into 3 groups. Verbal communication, in which you listen to a person to understand their meaning. Written communication, in which you read their meaning. And non-verbal communication, in which you observe a person and infer meaning. Collaboration, likewise, is a broad term, the components of which lie in several topologies. The key issue is not to understand the classification, but to understand the way we can use these to have a positive impact on the quality of learning and teaching in our schools. As teachers, we can set a good example when it comes to collaboration. If students see us working together to achieve our goals or to solve problems, they may be more likely to do this themselves. Collaboration with our colleagues is also beneficial for our professional development, so it's a double win. You may consider team teaching, peer observation, or project work. In this complex world we live in, with all its challenges and problems, communication and collaboration are literally more important than ever. The next generation will have to deal with multiple issues, many of which we might not be able to imagine. Supporting these teenagers to be able to express themselves in ways that encourage others to listen, to collaborate and act positively should be central of our work today. Basically, all activities in English language classroom are communicative. To make them collaborative, I would offer you to use the following strategies. So the first one, establish group goals. This keeps groups on tasks and establishes a clear learning outcome. Next one, create complex learning activities. If the task is too simple, they can easily do it alone. And if the task is complex, it requires more efforts and so more collaboration. Prepare students to be a part of a team. This is the only way students can learn to work together in order to help them understand the benefits of collaboration. Minimize opportunities to hide. If there is a room to hide, they will hide. So create small groups where there is less room to hide. Design meaningful roles that relate to the content and to the task. And final, focus on real-world problems. You don't need to spend your time designing an artificial scenario. Use the inspiration from everyday problems. Communication and collaboration, taught effectively across the curriculum, could transform learning opportunities for students to participate in lively conversations, express their opinions, build other ideas, present information, and evaluate another speaker's point of view. And remember, critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication are interrelated and interconnected, just like the trees. Let's consider them not individually, but as a part of our mother tree system to transform learning and teaching in our classrooms.